Hi everyone, here is another very important video for you to watch. This video will discuss all the ethical issues that you have to be mindful as a researcher. Remember, being aware of these issues and addressing them in your research report, thesis, or journal is very, very important, especially because the examiners and the reviewers are looking out for these. If they find that you have not complied with the ethical requirements as expected in your research study, then they will not accept your research. The first ethical issue is avoiding bias. Now, bias on the part of the researcher is unethical. Bias is different from subjectivity. Don't confuse between the two terms. Subjectivity is a way of thinking that you develop due to factors such as educational background, training, professional background, competence in research, intellectual capability, and philosophical perspective. It is your way of looking at things. Bias is not that. Now, subjectivity, you can develop a way of looking at and interpreting things which could be different from other researchers. You do not deliberately alter, but you just interpret the information differently, much like how an economist will look at things differently than a psychologist or a doctor. However, bias is different. Bias is a deliberate and intentional attempt either to hide what you have found in your study or to highlight something disproportionately to its true existence. It is absolutely unethical to introduce bias into a research activity. Just because you are expecting an outcome, you cannot bias your findings. You cannot tune your findings in such a way that it supports your argument. That is bias. If you are unable to control your bias, you should not be engaging in research. Remember, it is the bias that is unethical, not the subjectivity. So if you show any kind of bias in your findings, if your data does not support your arguments and claims, that is bias. That means you are trying to twist the data into confirming your arguments, and the examiners and the reviewers will pick up on it. Provision or deprivation of a treatment is your second ethical issue. Now, both the provision and deprivation of a treatment may pose an ethical dilemma. When testing an intervention or a treatment, a researcher usually adopts a control experiment design. In such studies, think about it. Is it ethical to provide a study population with an intervention or treatment that has not yet been conclusively proven effective or even beneficial? But if you do not test a treatment or an intervention, how can you prove or disprove its effectiveness or benefits? On the other hand, you are providing an intervention that may not be effective. Is this ethical? Is it ethical to deprive the control group of a treatment, even if it may prove to be only slightly effective? And beyond the issue of control groups, is it ethical to deprive people who are struggling for life of the possible benefit, however small, which may be deprived from a drug that is only under trial? As a researcher, you need to be aware of these ethical issues. There are arguments and counter arguments about these issues. However, it is usually accepted that deprivation of a trial treatment to a control group is not unethical, as in the absence of this, a study can never establish the effectiveness of a treatment, which may deprive many others of its possible benefits. This deprivation of the possible benefit, on the other hand, is considered by some as unethical. There are no simple answers to these dilemmas. Ensuring informed consent, a minimum risk, and frank discussion as to the implication of participation in the study may help you to resolve some of these ethical issues. A researcher also has an obligation to use appropriate methodology within his or her knowledge base in conducting a study. It is unethical to use deliberately a method or procedure you know to be inappropriate, such as by selecting a highly biased sample, using an invalid instrument, or drawing wrong conclusions. So you cannot just include the responses of the population that supported your argument or that supported your hypothesis. You have to make sure that the methodology that you use clearly shows that it was an unbiased research. The way you went about collecting the data, analyzing the data, presenting its findings, all should reflect an unbiased attitude. To report the finding in a way that changes or even slants them to serve your own or someone else's interest is unethical. This often happens if you are working for an organization or you are collecting data for an organization. You have been paid to collect data. Now you cannot just twist the findings to support them, to support their interest. Correct and unbiased reporting of the findings is an important characteristic of ethical research practice. So even if you are getting paid for research by an organization, you still have to reveal the findings that you actually found so that it reflects the true opinion of the people you researched. How will the information obtained from respondents be used by the researcher? So inappropriate use of information also is another ethical issue for you to consider. The use of information in a way that directly or indirectly affects respondents adversely is unethical. Can information be used adversely to affect the study population? If so, how can the study population be protected? As a researcher, you need to consider and resolve these issues. Sometimes it is possible to harm individuals in the process of achieving benefits for organization. An example would be to examine the feasibility of restructuring of an organization. Restructuring may be beneficial to the organization as a whole, but it may be harmful to some individuals. Should you ask respondents for information that is likely to be used against them? If you do, the information may be used against them, and if you do not, the organization may not be able to derive the benefits or the downfalls of the restructuring process. In my opinion, it is ethical to ask questions provided you tell respondents of the potential use of the information. Include the possibility of it being used against some of them, and you let them decide if they want to participate. Some may participate for the betterment of the organization, even though it may harm them, and others may decide against it. However, to identify either of them is unethical in research. So most of the times in research, unless it is highly important and very relevant to your research finding, we normally make sure that the respondents cannot be identified by their responses. So guys, these were some of the ethical issues that you have to consider if you're a researcher. Make sure you address them in your research report, because this will impress the reviewers and the examiners, and they will know that you have information. This is the crux of research, ethical issue. So if you have information about it, you have knowledge about it, you identified it and you addressed it, it will impress your examiners. Thank you for watching today's videos, guys. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. I will see you soon with my next video. Bye for now.